All right, welcome to the Charting Life podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, and basically we're trying to dive into life's uncharted territories and through meaningful conversations, and always with a healthy dose of laughter whenever possible. Today we got a very special guest here, Brigid, and I'm going to try my best to get your last name correct here. Is it Tebaldi?
Tebaldi, yep.
Okay, fantastic. We have Brigid
Did it.
Tebaldi. You're the host of the Discerning Mother podcast, which you can get pretty much anywhere you can get your podcasts. You're a mother of five, and your goal in general is to help moms heal, trust their instincts, and embrace a motherhood that's joyful, peaceful, and deeply rooted in faith. You're a functional women's health coach, a mentor to help moms who understand their bodies, that are not broken, that are not falling short in motherhood. I think that's very important there. And I know you have quite a bit of other stuff here. I'm trying to try a little peek behind the curtain. I'm trying to make sure I read through as much as possible. So, like I said, you're a functional women's health coach and mentor, trauma-informed professional, Billings ovulation method instructor, traditional birth companion, and a probably a whole list of anything else. And did I miss anything important? Did you want to add anything to that?
Daughter of Christ.
Yep, that is, I
Thing.
think, very important, and we'll cover that here in a minute too. So I guess first off, yeah, sorry, I get a little flustered and ahead of myself. That's just kind of who I am and how I think I'm trying to work through and grow through that. But today we're going to talk about everything from motherhood to healthcare, and I think one of the most important things is what does it mean to be good, and how do you operate through all of that. So a couple of questions leading into some stories. What was your family life like growing up? Were you a sibling of a bunch of kids? Were you, or was that just a lot less? What was your family life like growing up?
Yeah, so forgive me, I have a little bit of a cold, so hopefully my voice is okay. But so I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and we're about an hour north of Pittsburgh, so in the country, Amish country here. I still am here. I went away for college for a little bit, and then like in between college, and I came back, and I'm here. And so I grew up with four sisters, and it's somewhat of an interesting story because my my parents had three of us. So there are three biological sisters, and then there are two adopted sisters. And
All right.
so I am the youngest of the biological sisters. And then I'm trying to think. I believe I was in like kindergarten. So what is that, like 6 years old or something like that?
Like that, yeah.
Whenever 6 or 7, whenever my first adopted sister was adopted, and she was a baby. So they're both from China. So whenever I was 6 or 7, we got to go over to China. It was right, actually, no, I was older than that then. So I was probably 9 or 10 because it was right after the, no, it was right after 9/11, like literally
Okay.
like weeks after, because when I remember when we went over to China, the plane was empty. Like there was nobody on it.
Right.
Which I thought was awesome because I got to bounce around to different chairs, and like it was the time whenever they had the individual movie screens were becoming big. So I
Mhm.
got to watch all the movies that I wanted on like the 16-hour flight or whatever it was. So yeah, I was like I must have been 9 whenever, almost 10 whenever we adopted my first sister from China. And again, she was a baby. And then a few years later, um, I was in 5th grade, and my parents discerned that they wanted to adopt another child. So they had us all go back to China again. And we got my other sister, and they're both 26, 27 years old now. So again, we have like three biological
Mhm.
sisters who are a little bit older, and then my two younger sisters. And so that was really interesting growing up with, I would say everything was pretty normal growing up. Like, even though we're in a really small town with not much diversity, like nobody, nobody cared that they were different. Like it just, and my one sister has a pretty significant birthmark on her face. And even with that, like nobody really cared. It was just like we all hung out together. It was a pretty easygoing lifestyle. Growing up in the summer, we basically just rode our bikes outside all day, on the street. Luckily, it was like a very chill street. Again, I live in the middle of nowhere. Um, Rode our bikes, played flashlight tag, jumped on trampolines. Like it was a very normal childhood growing up. And then There were things that happened, but nothing crazy. And then my parents actually got us into horses, figuring probably that five girls needed some direction and something to keep them
Right.
out of trouble. So, um, and we were just chatting about the Kentucky Derby before we recorded. I never did that sort of thing. I did work in Kentucky for a little while, but yeah, so they had us get horses and then they eventually bought a little farm. And so all things considered, I had a very blessed childhood. I never really wanted for much material wise. And it was just kind of, yeah, like a normal, quote, normal American childhood.
Right. Well, that's wonderful. Was there ever any, I guess, issues amongst the sisters where some of you guys maybe have paired off against the others, or was there ever any kind of tension there? It doesn't seem like with the adopted siblings there may not have been a lot of contention there, but was that did that ever present a challenge, or was it just accepted them as your sisters and just had the normal childhood uh, growing up stories?
So there wasn't too much contention with my the sisters who were adopted. The only thing that was kind of funny is that whenever before we got my first sister from China, again, I was 8 or 9 whenever the process started. And I wanted to call my mom asked me what should we name her? Because her name was a Chinese name and that wasn't an easy name to say.
Right.
Um, a lot of X's in it. So it wasn't going to be easy for Americans to pronounce. So she said, "What do you want to name her?" And I said, "Go back to China," because I was the baby of the family and I did not want a sister. I
Right.
did not want to not be the baby anymore. So
Yeah.
that's sort of like this running joke in the family is like I wanted to call her "Go back to China." Obviously we've moved past that now, and so there was nothing else really besides like normal sister stuff. Whenever you have 5 girls in a family, you're gonna get things happening. Um, there are some funny stories, but again, like for whatever reason, nothing was really like there was not too many points of contention between all of us. Um, just a funny story. Whenever we had a lemonade stand one day in the summer, and my oldest sister got really mad about something, and she went into her bedroom, which was upstairs, and she started jumping up and down. And all of a sudden, we hear this like glass shatter, and she had
Mm.
jumped so hard that the light underneath of her bedroom had shattered.
Oh
And then, so
no.
just like little things like that happened, but nothing major. And like we all still get along pretty well. Obviously, we're all still people, so there's things that might pop up.
Right.
Generally speaking, we all get along pretty well.
All right. That is man, that's awesome. I guess everyone has their own childhood stories, and especially when you have a starting to get a bit of a larger household, these stories start to multiply and usually can create really great memories. But moving on into what we're talking about today, why don't you give us a bit of an overview of what is it that you do, who you are, and just any of the, I guess, anything relevant that. So yeah, like I said, an overview, and then what got you interested into this topic in general.
Yeah. So whenever I was growing up, I thought I was going to be an equine veterinarian. I had done all the shadowing, I had thousands of hours of shadowing. And I mean, quite frankly, I just couldn't get in anywhere. Like it just, even though I had the grades, I had the hours, like it just wasn't working for some reason. And now looking back, like I see that that's God's plan for me. But at the time, I was really, really frustrated. So I didn't know what to do. So I um, was graduating college and I just applied to some local schools for a master's degree because, again, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. And at the time, I was teaching horseback riding lessons a lot each week. So I was making pretty decent money doing that, but I just didn't feel like that was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I ended up getting my MBA from um, a school from a university around here and ended up teaching at a small private school. I taught science for a few years and then moved into teaching online at a private school for about 6 years or so. And same thing though, it's just like I like teaching, but it's not something that I love. And so,
Right.
or at least not about chemistry and biology, just not my favorite things to teach about. And so a few years ago I was really like soul searching and it's like what am I supposed to be doing? Like I can feel that I'm being called to do something, but I didn't know what that was. And I was trying to like do it all myself, like figure it out all on my own.
Mhm.
And that's something that I struggle with personally. And so finally I just like surrendered it all up and I was like, God, you need to tell, like, you need to be so explicit with what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, because I'd have like my brain is like all over the place. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And I knew that I was supposed to be a wife and a mother, but again, I just had this like longing for a little bit more, not more, but a little bit um different. Like I just knew I wanted to
Right.
do something different. And so I found the world of midwifery, so midwives, and I was like, this is amazing. This is exactly what I wanted to do. But at the time, I had three, almost four little kids. I was like, there's no way I can be on call doing this with multiple children. And so I was trying to figure out a way to bridge um, this new found love of midwifery with this other love that I had, which I previously had, of like natural living and was just living the way that God's calling us to live. And so I found coaching, and I had no idea what coaching was before, literally not a clue. And so I ended up enrolling in a women's health coach at the Women Institute of Women's Health Coaching. And again, I didn't even really know what coaching was still. I just went for it because it sounded like a good idea,
Yeah.
and found that I really actually, I really, really love coaching because it really helps. It helps. I get to help women to heal themselves, or to ask God for healing, and also to help them like heal the different past experiences and move forward in a way that just feels really genuine. And so that's sort of like the long, I guess the short-ish story to where I am now. So I'm a board certified health coach through the National Board of Medical Examiners, and I have lay midwifery training as a traditional birth companion. I don't attend births now just because again I have five little kids, but
Right.
maybe one day. But yeah, right now I help moms who have experienced challenging or traumatic pregnancies or births to see Jesus in their story and really heal and feel at peace around everything that happened.
Good. Yeah, I know that motherhood, and especially around the birthing, it can be very challenging, and there are so many bits of advice. Some are very helpful, some are perhaps different from what people think, and others are not helpful at all.
Yeah.
So that is I know trying to wade through some of that is going to be very interesting. But before we get into that, there's a question I do like to ask everybody. Usually do it towards the end, but I think this would be a really good starting place for us. Is what do you think it means to be good? And I like to keep that kind of general so you can be able to answer any direction you want. But usually, what does it mean to be a good person? So I'll let you take it however you want, whether it's being a good person or a mother. So how would you try to answer that?
Yeah, so I actually, whenever you told me this, I actually looked up the etymology of the word
Sure.
because I wanted to be like, actually, like, I was curious, like, what does it mean to be good?
Mhm.
And so, again, looking up, and if you're not familiar with what etymology is, just like the root of the word. So, what are the origins of the word, essentially? And the root of it is really um, to, what was it? To unite, um, to be associated with, to suit, to gather, like together, those sort of
Mhm.
words. And so I just thought that that was interesting and I wanted to note that. So ultimately, what it means to be good, though, for me,
Mhm.
is to do that which is morally correct or right. So to be righteous, um, to do what is going to be in the best interest of myself and of the other person as well. And I think I want to take it just one step further. And like I tell my kids that there's two paths that we can walk on. The one path is leading us to heaven. The other path is leading us not to heaven, like leading us to the evil one. And
Right.
so for me, it's I can break it down as simple as that. To be good means that it's we're on the path leading us to heaven.
Mhm.
And to and so that's like really what I strive for, because if you can have that as your compass, then ultimately that's going to like be the best thing that you can do in a eternal perspective, but also just from a day to day.
Good. Yeah, I very much like that answer. I think I would align a lot with that. And one of the reasons I like to ask that kind of question is kind of the thing with this podcast where we're trying to look through the either unexamined or the parts of life that we may not work through to define all that much. And I think that is, I think a lot of us may have an idea of what goodness is, but we may not work to try to actually think about that. But goodness is something that's supposed to kind of guide us, giving us an understanding of where we want to go in life. So, very much, I like the answer. And again, I would certainly align with that. So, moving into kind of the topic that you're more expertise in, I know you've talked on your podcast a bit about healthcare, and I really like how you approach um, like the logical side of things. You do a lot of definitions, like you just use etymology, which I think is fantastic when we're trying to work through definitions as well. But you also bring in kind of this the wholeness and the holistic aspect. And so I want to get your thoughts on the medical, all the profession, and I know you've talked about hospitals and all sorts of anything within the medical field. But I think using specific words, there's medical care and healthcare. And I've seen this type of idea and conversations pop up is, are we trying to treat symptoms and to get ourselves comfortable? Are we using medicine to just fix, maybe not fix, but kind of take away some of the challenges that we may have versus healthcare is hopefully divine healing for the not just medically, but for the whole person. So you have any thoughts on maybe the medical care versus healthcare? And then where does your kind of expertise come into that?
Yeah, for sure. So I have lots of thoughts.
Hmm.
So one thing I really want to throw out, like get out and make clear, is that I really do believe that God gave us medical care, like that he gave us this technology and this knowledge for a reason. And so therefore the knowledge is, and like everything that we have is not bad. So I don't want anybody to ever think that like that you can't have or you can't seek help from a hospital or you can't go to a doctor or a specialist or whatever or take a medication. Like, no, that is not the point because God gave us those things. So therefore they are good because God only makes things good. It's just a matter of then how do we use them? And also in regards to birth, which is where what I work in, I have a little saying. It's like sometimes moms need help and sometimes babies need help, and that's okay. So just keeping that in mind whenever I speak about this. So I almost think of it like sick care versus well care. So
Hmm.
sick care is more of that like medicalized when somebody is sick. And again, we have these life-saving treatments, these surgeries, everything like that, and they're miraculous. They're amazing.
Hmm.
And so I even just have a personal one of my family members, like literally 2 days ago, just received a massively life not transforming, but life-saving treatment. And so
Hmm.
again, I'm not against hospitals and medical system and everything like that. But what I'm against is that we have lost sight of what it means to actually be well.
Hmm.
And so my definition of well is you are well in mind, body, and soul, not just body. And so, and well can mean things for different people. I try to keep it pretty general, not from like a scientific standpoint, but from a like functionally fit perspective. So, can I get up off the ground comfortably? Can I do my joints hurt? Am I eating what makes my body feel good? Do I have brain fog all day? Like that's what I'm talking about in terms of wellness. You could get into the numbers and that sort of thing, but I don't think you necessarily need to. If you're in tune with your body, like you're going to know if you're well or not. And so again, there's this thought that the only way to heal yourself is to go and to get medicine in order to heal. And while that might be true that sometimes medicine might be needed to assist in healing, ultimately that is not the thing that is doing the healing. That is God allowing that medicine to do the work. And so by bringing him into the equation, so again, mind, body, and spirit, by bringing him into the equation and asking for that healing, but also recognizing that if that healing doesn't come, then that's part of a bigger plan and picture that he has, then that's whenever you can really start to heal everything. So in an
Right.
ideal world, we would all be healthy mind, body, soul. But so often some of the holiest people are those who do have ailments in their body or potentially in their mind. And that is because they have gone through these incredibly hard things that have literally taken them to rock bottom. But at that rock bottom is where Jesus is, and that's what's going to be that firm foundation that they then stand on.
Mhm.
So again, hospital systems are amazing. Do I love the way that they're run? Absolutely not. They're run for profit. They're run, generally speaking, for profit, for helping those high up continue to get higher up. And the way that they're set up now is not necessarily serving everybody in the way that they should or in the capacity that they should be able to. So I
Mhm.
don't necessarily love the system. However, I do recognize that that system is important. In terms of um, fixing the system, I don't think that it can be fixed. I think if we want, and this is speaking more specifically about birth, if we
Sure.
want to fix the system, we have to create the new system. And we have to make sure that that system then does not turn into the other system that we just left. And so this is a really big topic, but that's sort of like high level thoughts about it.
Right. That reminds me, is that, and I'm a bit of a geek on history. So I was looking into for another project, kind of the history of hospitals, and there's been medical care before Christianity, but those who are Christians really significantly shifted. So during the times, the Roman era, the Greeks, the Egyptians, even a lot of the medical care was more of treating people as a means to an end. So, for example, especially like in the Romans, they would primarily the most people receiving medical care were slaves and soldiers, so that they could get their bodies well enough to get back out there and either do the work or go out and fight more people or whatever the case is. But Christians came in and really shifted the game. In the first couple of centuries, kind of within the apostolic age and a little bit after that, there were plagues going through the Roman Empire, and there were Christians who would risk death and many times did die by giving care to the sick. And it wasn't just here, let's throw medicine out through your window and hope for the best. They were actually in there and caring for their body and their soul. And there's another person, Basil of Caesarea. I think I may not be pronouncing his name correctly, but he really brought about one of the true first hospitals by it was open for anybody, but it was also for the traveler, for the poor. Nobody was, to my knowledge, absolutely charged. There were some of the bishops and those who were over his region. They were making sure they were taking up donations so that people could be cared for, and they cared for the entire person. And throughout history, you have the monasteries and the monks who would give that sort of care as well. And even on into more modern history, I know I like John Wesley a lot. He was in the 1700s, and he was all about holistic healthcare as well. We're going to heal the whole person. And so I like again what you were saying. It's a really big distinction, and I think as great as it is to change things from the inside, it's also very good to build up something as an alternative. Again, like 2,000 years ago with some of the early Christians, they were building up something that was different, and that was the model that really became dominant for you know many centuries. Um,
Yeah.
so and you've also talked about intuition, like a mother's intuition. I think that's really interesting, and it is very special. How do you maybe distinguish? Give us your, I guess, first understanding of what intuition is. How would you try to work through helping somebody, whether it is another mother or sometimes us very silly men, understand what intuition is, and then how do you distinguish that from perhaps just a other thoughts in mind that were maybe that's not really your intuition?
Yeah. So um, intuition for me is really just like the Holy Spirit guiding you. And so if you can listen to like that like still small voice and hear what it is that it is saying, like I believe that that is your intuition, and that is again the Holy Spirit guiding you to do whatever it is that's going to like lead you towards God's will. Now that said, um we have so much noise in our culture today that it's so hard to discern what it is that we like what our intuition is telling us versus what everybody else is telling us. So that's another thing that I really try to work on with clients is like, let's figure out what you want, not what everybody else is telling you to want. Um, and so to help figure out what is it that is what your intuition actually is telling you, I want to offer two, maybe two. See if I can remember both of them. So the first one, yeah, two. Okay. So the first one is um really important because I think that this is one way that the enemy really tries to get us to feel guilty, feel bad, and then therefore spiral. And that
Mhm.
is that first thought that pops into our head whenever we are thinking about something or we look at something or whatever it is that's happening. That first thought is not really from us.
Mhm.
That first thought is from our brain, our like just our biological body. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like good or bad. It just is a thought.
Mhm.
What we then can control is that second and subsequent thoughts. So that's what we really want to focus on, not that first initial thought. And that's where having control of our mind, our body, and our soul, well, you know what I mean, control. Um,
Sure.
like having a handle on it and like making sure that we're rooted in Jesus. That's what's super important because if if our first thought is something negative or judgmental about somebody else or negative about ourselves, if we are not rooted and have like scripture on hand and like memorized and everything like that, we are immediately going to probably spiral into like all these different negative things about whatever it is. And which is what the enemy wants. But that's not what God wants for us. Like he wants us to have like to be equipped with his armor. And so that's one of the first things is again being gentle with yourself, recognizing that again, you don't necessarily control your first thought, but you control your subsequent thoughts. And you can then do with that what you will. And then the second thing is to figure out what is your intuition telling you, or like, is this your intuition speaking? Is just really simply, does it bring peace? Does it bring calm? Does it bring clarity? Or does it bring anxiety, confusion, fear, any of those things? If it's bringing peace and calmness and clarity and just like calmness, that's generally going to be your intuition because again that comes from Jesus himself and he can't bring any emotions besides those things. And so if it's rooted in something else, that's again going to be um like negative feelings that are not going to bring you to this peaceful calm place. So that's one of the big things that with moms, especially around sleep for some reason, like they
Mhm.
might want to co-sleep with their babies, but everybody else is telling them no. And so they get a lot of anxiety around like, well, everybody else is telling me not to do this, but like just I really want to do this and it feels like so right. It feels like so much easier and just like just nicer. They they can't it's really important for them to step back and say like what is it that my body is telling me, like my intuition is telling me versus what the culture and like those around me are telling me. Not that those around you are bad, but they're not living in your shoes. Like they don't know your past. They haven't lived it. They're not living your life right now. So that's just a quick example is again, when it comes to sleep with babies and toddlers, it's really easy to fall into the like this is what everybody's doing, so therefore this is what I should be doing. But if you're not at peace around what it is that you're doing, and that's probably God's way of trying to nudge you to just
Mhm.
like look at something else. Again, not saying that it's like you need to flip everything on its head, but just be
Right.
open to it. So that's really the biggest, those are the two biggest things is again, remembering that that first thought is just a biological reaction typically. It's your nervous system trying to either protect you or like make you aware of something. And then after that, that's what you can really control. And then just whatever brings you peace and calm, that's going to be like the intuition nudging you towards whatever God's will is for you.
And do you have any examples of perhaps where, for whether it's you or somebody else, where the woman's or the mother's intuition seems to be in conflict with perhaps what the father, if you try to base off of like, here's the details, here's the logic, here's everyone else is saying that this is the particular way. How would you navigate that? And again, do you have any examples of that taking place?
Yes. So this is somewhat of a personal one, but also I've navigated this with clients many times as well. And so that is the mother wants to give birth at home, and the
Hmm.
father is like, no, we need to go to the hospital.
Hmm.
And so just to come at it from two different points of view, the mother, whether this is her first time or this is her second time, she feels most comfortable in her home. She doesn't feel comfortable maybe going to the doctor's office or going into a hospital for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter, but that's how she feels. And then same thing with the husband. He doesn't feel comfortable with her giving birth at home because he has been conditioned and like shown that giving birth in the hospital is quote safer than at home. So those are the two different like thought patterns that we have. And so what then has to happen is that they have to recognize that they're both parents of this child, so they both do have a say. However, the mother is the one who's going to be actually physically giving birth. And while the husband or the father is the one who, again, has that say in everything, he also has to recognize that his wife has this inherent understanding of what it is that she needs and where she feels most comfortable. And if she is not able to feel comfortable giving birth in a place that is comfortable for her, then it is more than likely that that birth is going to be really challenging or troublesome in some capacity. And so that's where a lot of education comes in. So you're not trying to convince him. You're not trying to say like, well, this is what I'm going to do because I want to do it. Because again, it's still his child. It's a matter of educating him to show him that this is where I feel the safest. This is where my body is going to do the work it needs to do. Again, this is where the education comes in. And then from there, it's just a matter of him really realizing that he can't control everything. That his job, that the way that he was made was to protect and to make sure that his wife and child stay healthy and stay safe. But in this moment, like this is not his wheelhouse and that he can't control it and that his job is not to protect her from from childbirth. His job is to make her feel the most comfortable and most safe so that she can do her job in a way that only she can do. So that's kind of like the bridge that we try to make is, again, we're not convincing. We're not just saying, well, we're going to do this because I want to do this. It's really acknowledging that there's two people involved, well, multiple, you know what I mean? What husband and wife got involved in baby. And then from there, educating to show maybe the wife does feel comfortable in a hospital. That's fine. If that's where she feels comfortable, then getting the husband on board to be like, I feel most comfortable in a hospital. And but maybe I only want X, Y, or Z. And so it's because birth is such only women can do it. This is one area where it's really hard, but men really do have to step out of that, like control, protect, always have the answer, and more into the protect the space, less of less of changing and like trying to manipulate the situation in itself.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That way, it's not necessarily, coming from my perspective, as a man and a father and a husband, that drive and that instinct and the need to protect and to provide, it's not so much as ignore all of your instincts as much as let's make sure we focus it on a particular area. So I like what you said, kind of protect that space. And, when the mother is in the middle of labor and going through all of that, the contractions are happening, there's going to be limited, I guess, ability to ensure what your plan is and what your ideal is. Yeah. That's where you need that advocate, your spouse, to be able to come in and be able to make sure that's communicated well and that is enforced. Would you say that's about pretty accurate to you?
Yeah. Again, it's just really recognizing that we both have different roles and that women are the only one who can give birth. They're the only ones that know what their body and their baby is doing. And men are the only ones who can be men and protect them and that sort of thing. So it's just recognizing the two different roles are very, very different, and only women can only do one thing and men can only do this other thing. And just to recognize that inherent dignity of both of each other.
Yeah. And, I was surprised. So my son is double digits now. So it's been a while ago when he was born. And it was interesting that the nurses were a little surprised that I was staying with my wife the whole time. If you have multiple kids and your family isn't nearby, that presents some logistical challenges. But, again, I was like, I'm not leaving her side if I can help it. And so I slept on that very uncomfortable chair couch thing and did the best I could. And I think one of the funnier bits was I was just absolutely tired, which, compared to my wife that, she obviously had
Yeah,
the trouble.
never say that to a woman in labor.
Right. But I was getting to the point where I was after our son was born, I was just I was absolutely exhausted. And she was trying to get my attention. I wasn't waking up. So she had something, I don't know I don't even know why she had some sort of like a hard candy or something kind of hard and small. And I remember being woken up by her having incredible accuracy and just whacking me right in the head, throw across
That's
the room.
funny.
And I was like, wait, what's going on? And kind of, I had to immediately get into action. But yeah, I think, absolutely being there is, part of being a spouse is being there in whatever way is needed. I know we're getting close to the end of our time here. Do you have any, I guess, advice that you would give to a friend, maybe if they're, let's maybe make it on more of the holistic healthcare and for healing for the whole body. What kind of advice would you give to somebody that is just getting started and trying to figure this out? They don't really know what, healing of, mind, body, and soul is. What kind of advice would you give them to just get started in that process?
Yeah, so I'm trying to put myself back to where I was like 10 years ago thinking about this. Excuse me. I think the one of the biggest things that you can do that will change everything else is to read labels. And I know that that sounds like so boring and so like blah, but and I'll get to why I'm saying this. But if you read labels and if you are like more of quote like an ingredient household, what that's going to do is one, it's going to force you to really look at what is it that you are eating, what you're putting into your body, because that's going to affect all of your other health and everything like that. I'll come back to that. It's also going to get you more in tune with what's happening around you. So, for example, like if you are trying to eat only food that comes to your local grocery store, well, seasonally, you're going to notice there's a big difference between like what you can get in the summer with like berries on sale and like abundancy of certain things versus in the winter where it's like squash and potatoes. And so that's going to get you to think about again what's happening around you and how the different how like nature is being affected by different seasons. And so that's one of the biggest things is like just think about what it is that you are eating because from there you can really start to see everything else shift. Where if you then notice like, oh, when I eat this versus that, like I don't feel good when I eat that. So therefore I'm
Right.
just eat this. And that whole cascade of everything from there will open up many, many different like different ideas and changes that you're gonna make. But the biggest thing with doing that is by eating food, just like whole food, what that is going to do is it's going to really, really help you heal anything that is going on in your gut, in your brain, immune system, everything like that. And that's going to really open your eyes up to like, oh, I was living in a fog for the past 5 years. Or like, wow, I didn't realize that eating this gave me heartburn or doing this like made me feel this way. So just making little shifts like that and like realizing that if you can just eat food, that's going to make you feel better. You're going to want to move more. You're going to want to rest more because when you rest, you're actually going to be rested. Um, so I think that's the biggest thing is really just eat food. And I should also note too that this is coming from a place of I had I had eating disorder for 5 years. And when I first started eating food again, my brain was like, whoa, like I can think. Like I
Right.
am not tired all the time. Like I'm not thinking about food all the time. And so that's where this is really coming from is like what you put in your body is the foundation for everything. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect. Like my kid's birthday party was this weekend and I definitely had cupcakes and cookies and ice cream. But I made them with ingredients that I knew what was in them. And so I know that if I ate like multiple of them, I wouldn't feel so great. But I knew eating just like one cupcake, I would be totally fine. And so that's one of the things is eat well, because when you can eat well, your brain is going to feel good, your body is going to feel good, and that's going to lead you to just more overall wellness and just being more connected with God in general too.
Yeah, I agree with that. One of the foods that I've always loved is peanut butter.
Oh
And I
yeah.
always got, wherever I could, and especially, if there's a point where you're trying to be on a tight budget, you'll get the cheapest thing you can get.
Yeah.
But a little while back, where my wife and I are trying to focus on eating better, kind of, if you can read and understand the ingredients, it's probably better off for you. And I switched to I guess the peanut butter where the ingredients are peanuts and some salt.
Yeah.
And honestly, and you got to do a little bit extra work to make sure you stir it up because you got the oil separated a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
I can't hardly go back to Jif or whatever else
I
it is
know.
because it's
It
so
tastes
much better.
gross.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there, anyone ever gets into gardening, whether it is the herbs or just the vegetables or fruits themselves, is so much better than it would ever be from a store bought, even from some of like the whole food type of stores as well. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think definitely eating is a really good point. I know we're getting pretty much to the end here. So I guess let me ask you, I guess one final question is, speaking of food, or maybe two questions. One, speaking of food, what is perhaps your favorite food that you would go for, and is there like a healthy or best way to approach that health wise? And then I have one more follow up after that.
Oh, this is a trick question. Okay. So I don't necessarily adhere to like the standard health foods.
Mhm.
So one of my favorite foods is actually burgers, like
Okay.
cheeseburgers.
Right. Yeah.
But again, like I know where the cow that we're getting the meat comes from. I know what it ate. I know where it was butchered. Like I know everything about it. I know what I'm putting in the ingredient, like the meat in. And I just think they taste so delicious. Um, so that's one of my favorite meals is burgers. And
Yeah.
if I have a not so healthy one, I also really like if you're familiar with Handel's ice cream. I don't know if that's near you.
There with that one
Located
now.
around us. They have the best Buckeye ice cream ever. It's so good. It is not good for you at all, but that's one of those things where I'm like, every once in a while, it's okay. And again, that goes back to that thinking of like, my body knows what to do with food. If I'm generally healthy, usually, then this little bit isn't going to affect it too much. So yeah, burgers and especially with like a Thousand Island on it with like lettuce and tomato and caramelized onion.
Nice.
So good.
And then the last question I'll ask you is just for somebody, I know we're running pretty close to the time frame here, but from the spiritual side of things, some people might mention, soul or spiritual, um, as far as if they're looking for some sort of advice or wanting to maybe kind of get started in finding some healing in their soul, what very quick, what advice would you suggest?
Um, find somebody who does all of this with Jesus in mind because there's a lot, especially out there now with the internet about like healers and that sort of thing. And while they have great intentions, I'm sure, a lot of them open up things that open up doors to the evil one that we should not open up. And so, whatever healing you need, find somebody who believes that Jesus is the one true healer, not the person. So like I never say that I help heal people. Like I help them I give them exercises that can help them heal, but only because they're invoking Jesus and asking Jesus to do the healing.
Mhm.
So like I don't personally do any healing. Like I don't. So that would be the biggest thing is find somebody who's doing it in Jesus's name and that you really align with and that somebody who gets to the root of the issue, not just giving you coping mechanisms.
Sure.
That's one of the big things like with my clients is we talk about the birth trauma, but so often, actually literally all the time, every single person, there's so much more to it than just that birth. Usually it stems into mother wounds, father wounds, uh, issues with God himself, like so many things, so many different memories shape how you are behaving today. So going back and healing those memories and like allowing your body to be healed, not just your mind, but your nervous system to be regulated as you experience those memories is super, super important.
Um, That is I think, a really good place to leave off. I wish we could continue this conversation for so much longer. There's so many different threads we could have pulled on there, but thank you so much. And if anyone wanted to find you, find any of your information, website, podcasts, how can somebody find you?
Yeah, so I'm mostly on Instagram at Brigid.Tebaldi. My website is Loreto Wellness. That's spelled Loreto Wellness. And then the podcast is The Discerning Mother. You can find it pretty much anywhere. And there we really just chat about everything around motherhood, discerning,
Mhm.
um, just healthy lifestyles, very similar to this as well.
Fantastic. So we're gonna go ahead and I guess sign off here. Thank you. And I feel weird saying the whole like and subscribe, but that definitely helps quite a bit.
Do it
And
anyway.
then, yeah, do it anyways. Do the like, subscribe, leave a comment, that sort of thing. And go ahead and find Bridget's podcast as well and give her a follow as well. It's definitely worth it.